I wanted to talk about, what 2019 was for Miami comedy. And I've got to admit, I think now it's safe to say that the comedy scene here in Miami is great, for lack of a better term. It's great. So when I first started doing comedy, a little backstory on some of the reasons why I started this website. When I started doing comedy back in 2009, I had to drive a lot of places. So I had to go to. I remember Wednesday nights. I would go every week to Boca. I drive all the way to Boca, which is like an hour drive every Wednesday. And there was a show where it was one of the best open mics at this place called the Funky Buddha. I haven't been there in a while, but I believe it's now called Mad Robot Company or something like that. And since I was fairly new, I had to go up really late. I had to show up early, get on the list, and go up really late. And even though there was still an audience like at 11, 12, 1 in the morning, it was still a good way to get in front of people on a weekly basis. And I remember sometimes I'd drive all the way to Marco Island when the Off the Hook Comedy Club was there. I think that was on a Tuesday. And that was like a 2-3 hour drive. Go there, do your 5 minutes, come back home, 3 in the morning, wake up, go to work the next day. There was a lot of dedication. I also did a lot of shows in West Palm Beach in, random places, Lake Worth. These are all hours away from Miami. There was one really good room, which local comedian Freddie Stebbins used to run, called John Martin's, but it was a rotating show. So if you go on one night, you can't go on the following night in order for it to be fair, and it's totally understandable. So it was just very difficult to go up and perform and practice as a comedian in Miami. And I've seen a lot of comedians come and go since 2009, and I've also seen a lot of rooms come and go since 2009. And I knew something had to be done. So I started this podcast called the Brick Wall Sessions. And what I did was it was kind of like a congregation of comedians talking about certain topics. We even did a couple of live shows at a sushi lounge on Saturday or Sunday, I forget. And we would just talk about topics and see how we can make something cool happen. And, over the years, a lot of comedians got really good and then they left. They went to other cities to get more stage time and find more opportunities than what was available here in Miami. So I made a lot of friends and then they all left. And I graduated at FIU with a degree in marketing. And I started a room at the Flamingo Theater. And then, to avoid mentioning any names or businesses, it was taken over by another entity. And I was down in the dumps. I was down to ground zero, and I had no room. All the other rooms I had, I kind of left because they were broken down places. I mean, when I first started producing comedy shows in Miami, they were in broken down dive bars. I had a casino gig, but it was too open. It was behind the bar. When you try to perform behind somebody, shaking up drinks and dumping ice, it just ruins the magic. So. There was a lot of productions, I'd say in 2014, 2015. My first ever production, I still remember it to this day, was in the attic of Tobacco Road in Brickell in downtown Miami. And the owners didn't even know we were doing a show there. It was kind of like Fight Club. The manager kind of it was like a game of telephone. There was a promoter, a low-end promoter, and he told the general manager to do a production upstairs, and we went upstairs. There was no bartender. People had to go downstairs to grab a drink or food and then go upstairs with it. It was very hidden. And eventually, the place closed down, which was a great place. And that was the end of that. But I'll never forget my first comedy show, and it was great. It was a lot of fun. Anyways, so fast forward. I started MiamiComedy.com in 2015. I believe. And, one show at a time, building it up. A lot of things started up. A lot of things started disappearing. Like, you start something up and then like a month, two later, it's already gone. But eventually I kind of got the hang of marketing and promoting events and making valuable experiences where people kind of remember your name and the comedians that are involved, and just create good times all around. And then eventually the website just picked up. So I'd say the website picked up in early or mid 2017. We kind of had a slow progress in 2018, and then it just boomed in 2019. So I can just imagine how 2020 is going to affect the business, which is, I'm looking forward to it. But I think now in 2019 is when it's safe to say that the comedy scene in Miami is great. We have an amazing comedy scene here in the 305. And the reason why I say that is because every show that we've been producing is always in attendance. There's always a groups of people, I'd say, coming out to see what the local comedians in Miami are like. The comedians that we have here housed in Miami that are still living here, they're getting really good. The writing is getting on point. It's kind of like we all grow together. So if one comedian gets good, another one wants to get good with him or her. And then we have like roast battles now. Local comedian Mateo is hosting these roast battles, and comedians kind of have to like go at each other's necks on stage and in public, and really get an ego check and write original good material. And we know if anyone's out there like stealing jokes, and all the comedians are in attendance in the back watching your set and judging and making sure that we're on point. And we've got really good hosts for our weekly shows. And it's come down to the point that we've eventually started something where it's ongoing. It's just so much momentum is just carrying behind every event on a weekly basis that you can now go up on stage almost any night of the week in Miami, in all the cool, trendy places, not broken down places, not hidden places, in trendy bars, in places where people want to go to see comedians perform. And the shows are always fun. The people in attendance are also very original, unique personalities. It's kind of like a mixture of like nightlife people and people that like to take it easy, and people that would stay home if there wasn't anything low key to do, something that you could just vibe out with your friends or on a date. And they go out, and then they go to these events and they have a good time, and then comedians shake their hands. They get to know some names here in Miami. They build up their fan base, and now comedians, they get a following. Like, there's so many comedians in Miami that are just kind of making a name for themselves now. So, yeah, the comedy scene, and from what I've gathered, because I've been to other places in the United States to check out their comedy scene. I went to Cleveland, saw the scene in Seattle, New York, of course, DC, and I think it's time to say it and to make it official. Miami has a great comedy scene. So that's what this podcast was for, to announce it, to make it official. You heard it here first at miamicomedy.com. Miami has a great comedy scene, and it's only going to get better.